Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations. We are on to the final part of Recipe for Turnabout. It's the trial. Time to bring the tiger out of the cage. January 8th, 9:46 a.m. District Court Defendant Lobby Number 1. Good morning, Mr. Wright. Good morning, Maggie. So, what do you think is going to happen today, sir? Yesterday's session didn't go so well and ended up a giant mystery. That's true. And we still haven't solved a single part of it yet. Are you okay, Nick? Huh? Oh, yeah, of course. I saw that. That little flash of doubt in your eyes. No, that wasn't doubt. That was, determination. Why don't I believe you? Nearly time, Maggie. You'd better get going to the defendant's seat. Roger. Don't let me down, Mr. Wright. I'm counting on you. Hey, pal! Hey, Detective Gumshoe. Quit stressing Maggie out. She doesn't need that. How did you know she was stressed? I was watching through the doorway. Oh. You look like you lost the case already. Show a bit of confidence, will you, pal? Here, maybe this'll help. Huh? Have you taken up aromatherapy too? Not in a million years, pal. Don't tell me that you don't remember this thing. Come to think of it, that doesn't look like one of those aromatherapy bottles. It's the small bottle that turned up in Tribulations kitchen a couple days ago. Wow, look at all these little bottles. Wow, they're aromatherapy oils. He's got so many they're overflowing onto the floor. Hey, wait a minute. There's one bottle that's different from all the others. Well, what do you know? It doesn't have a label either. And it doesn't smell. Finally got the analysis results back from the lab. So, what is it? Is it the poison? I'm afraid not, pal. It's, medication. Medication? Yeah, for ears. Topical use only, apparently. For ears, you mean? Yeah, it's the medication Glenn Elg was using for his ruptured eardrum. What was Glenn Elg's ear medicine doing in the kitchen? Victim's ear medicine, found covered in identified fingerprints in the kitchen. What about the unidentified fingerprints? Anything on that? Someone screwed up, so they only had time to analyze the contents of the bottle. Another hour, and they might have gotten something on the prints, but... that's gonna weaken its impact as a piece of evidence. Okay, pal, this is it. Make sure your defense is impregnable today, got it? Today's trial. I'm going to expose that guy for what he's done, or my name isn't Phoenix Wright. January 8th, 10 a.m. District Court, courtroom number 4. Court is now in session for the trial of Maggie Bird. The defense is ready, Your Honor. Ready and waiting as always, Your Honor. Very good. Then we'll get underway at once. Yesterday, we heard the testimony of Mr. Victor Kudo. He claims to have witnessed the defendant putting a powder into the victim's coffee. However, the witness's testimony was plagued with a number of problems. The mark on the rim of the cup shows that the victim drank from it with his right hand. But according to the old man's testimony, he picked it up with his left hand. Thank you, Mr. Godot. Furthermore, according to the witness's account, the victim was listening to the radio with an earpiece in his left ear. Yet, the victim's left eardrum was ruptured, which made him effectively deaf in that ear. It's amazing how many contradictions a single case can have, huh, Nick? Allow me to enlighten you, Your Honor. The world, you see, keeps turning, and we must turn with it. Need to turn my phone down. You've lost me already, Mr. Godot. Don't let the mysteries of yesterday mystify you today. Only losers think like that. You've got to change with the times. It's one of my rules. Are you implying that you've resolved these contradictions? You know the answers to these riddles? The old guy wasn't just throwing seeds in here. He was throwing us off the scent. And today I'll prove it. Very well. Let the first witness take the stand. And you are?
Oh, bonjour, everyone! I am Jean Armstrong, the owner of it, and head chef of La Tribulations restaurant and chatte.
Forgive me for asking, witness, but are you a woman?
Oh la la, monsieur! As you can see, I am Le Pert Pookie Gentleman, non?
On the day of the incident, you were in Tribulations' kitchen. Isn't that right?
With you, monsieur. Everything feels right.
Wow, he's totally unfazed. Doesn't anything intimidate this guy? Very well. Your testimony, please, witness. Please tell the court what happened that day at Tribulations.
Oui, volunteers.
Volunteers? I don't know. At Tribulations.
When it all happened, there were just 2 customers in my restaurant. I remember I was experimenting with some new art decor that day. Like having a large mirror between the tables, for example. Oui, perhaps that is what the old man was looking at. The cup, the earpiece, and the glasses. He would have seen everything in reverse, non?
Mirror?
Oui, on grand mirror, the most enormous mirror.
And suddenly the mystery disappears. Like I said, the world keeps turning, so roll with it. That would explain the coffee cup and the earpiece conundrum. The mirror would have made everything appear back to front. What the heck? It's way too early in the morning for this to be happening to me. Now then, Mr. Wright, you may begin your cross-examination.
When it all happened, there were just 2 customers in my restaurant.
And who were the 2 customers exactly?
Miles, of course, the young man who died. And the other, not so young man.
You're referring to yesterday's witness, I presume. What about the other man Maggie says she saw at the table? Something tells me Mr. Armstrong isn't planning to disclose his existence. We need some hard evidence first before we can bring him up, don't we? I guess I'll just have to try a different approach for the time being.
I remember I was experimenting with some new art decors that day.
You were experimenting with Art Deco? How come I never heard about that before today?
You are not familiar with the language of interior design, monsieur?
Please stay on topic. Now, why didn't you tell the court about this before?
But I did, just a few moments ago.
Excuse me, Mr. Armstrong. This deco you mentioned, are you referring to some sort of decoction? No, Art Deco. It's a style of design, Your Honor. He's talking about interior design. Walls, ceilings, carpets, that kind of thing. Ah, yes, of course. That deco.
I was trying to achieve a more effeminate look for my restaurant. I was planning the most bold remodeling of the decor. Like having a large mirror between the tables, for example.
How big of a mirror are we talking about here?
Oof! Something about 4 meters wide and, about 2 meters high.
Let's see, 1 meter is about a yard. Holy glass in a frame, that's huge!
I was intending to install it on the ceiling eventually.
The ceiling? Is there a mirror on the ceiling? I don't remember.
Mine none, but I decided not to go through with it in the end.
What should I do? Should I ask him more about the mirror or not? Leave it for now. He couldn't lie about such a huge object like that. Must have been there in the restaurant somewhere. So the witness yesterday had seen the victim reflected in a mirror. Okay, so what is that? Like having a large mirror between the tables. Okay.
Perhaps that is what the old man was looking at.
Normally, I'd expect people to know the difference between a reflection and a real object. Normally. How does normality come into this? That's lame, Trite. Even for you. Huh? Are you trying to say that if something isn't normal, it isn't possible? Is that it? Where does that leave the porky-headed lawyer and the top-knot chick over there? And the ungodly cool guy with the mask over here? Well, Trite?
Ah! Not the hair! I do not have a top knot.
Mr. Godot is correct. A lack of normality is no basis for discounting an argument.
Bien, logic is one law day. La cup, la earpiece, and la glasses, it would have been you would have seen everything in reverse, non?
Everything? He would have seen everything in reverse?
Wee! Hey, Nick, we should take a second think about what old Seedy said in his testimony.
How did he phrase it again?
The boy was wearing the earpiece on the same side as the green lens on his spec. No question, you can lock me up if I'm wrong. It was his left ear without a doubt. Then he used the same hand to pick up the cup, his left ear.
I don't really know the voice I've given him. He's just kind of a grumpy old man.
If he saw everything you described reflected in a mirror, then everything you said he saw on the left was actually on the right, huh? And that clears up all the problems with his testimony, I guess. Or does it? Kind of hard to believe everything's the fault of a mirror, but... Do you think old CD saw everything through a reflection? If he did, it would explain all the contradiction in his testimony. But that just makes the situation worse for Maggie. There's gotta be something in that old man's testimony. We've gotta dig deeper.
If you really had such a large mirror in the restaurant, someone would have noticed it. But there's nothing about a mirror in Mr. Kudo or Maggie Bird's testimonies.
But...
You didn't ask, Trite. You have only yourself to blame for such sloppy work. What? A mirror was delivered to Tribulations the day before the incident. Really? As Mr. Armstrong testified, he was carrying out some design changes. And as it turned out, he didn't actually use the mirror in the end. This just doesn't add up. Even if a mirror was delivered to Tribulations, it doesn't prove that it was in the restaurant on the day of the crime. You want to doubt someone, Trite, look in the mirror. I'm sure the person looking back at you will be dubious enough. So the witness yesterday had seen the victim reflected in a mirror.
He would have seen everything in reverse, none?
None. Crime photo. The coffee cup, the earpiece, and the HMD? Let's think back over what Mr. Kudo's testimony for a second, shall we?
The boy was wearing the earpiece on the same side as the green lens of his specs. No question, you can lock me up if I'm wrong. It was his left ear without a doubt.
So to summarize, we were told both the HMD and the earpiece were on the victim's left side. Now, if Mr. Kudo saw all that as a reflection in a mirror, it means both the HMD and the earpiece were actually on the victim's right side.
Exactement! You see, monsieur, now that you think about it, it is not so odd, non?
Unfortunately, that's where we run into a monumental contradiction with the facts. If Mr. Kudo really did see everything in a mirror, why is it that the HMD is now on the wrong side of his head? Order! Order! Mr. Wright is correct. If the witness genuinely observed the victim reflected in a mirror, then we would expect the victim's eyepiece to have been over his right eye. How bitter. Right. You should have a taste of this bitterness. It'll calm you down in no time. Are we talking about your coffee or something completely different? You don't understand the way the witness thinks. How he thinks? You remember this, I presume? The I broke the vase sorry apology Mr. Kudo's sworn testimony? Exactly. The old man has one very grievous habit, other than throwing seeds. The more of an impression something makes, the more muddled his mind makes it. And what's the most striking thing about Mr. Elg? Clearly, it's the victim's eyepiece. And that's my point. The old man strikes again. Mr. Elg's HMD made a big impression on the old man. I saw the earpiece and those newfangled spectacles he was wearing. Oh yes, they were both on his left ear. Do you hear his left ear? Well, trite. That's the worst but best impression of Kudo ever. I didn't even try.
Wow, I really thought he was old seedy for a minute there. Godot's good.
Enough! I must agree that yesterday's witness was irresponsibly rash in much of his testimony.
Bad luck, Nick. Looks like the boil of a contradiction you found is just a rash.
A mirror can't be beaten by a handful of seeds. Nor can it lie. So, what exactly was the old man looking at? Fill us in, Mr. Armstrong. Go on. Tell the court. We're all ears.
Oui, I can explain. Please, if you would look at the plans of the restaurant.
The mirror.
Alors, is everyone sitting comfortably? The mirror, it was in the middle of the restaurant dividing the two halves. There is only one seat from which you could have an image of the victim. That was the seat on the table next to the victims. That was where the old man was sitting. After a terrible incident occurred, I moved the mirror so it was not in the way. But naturally, I did not touch anything else.
I did not touch anything else, huh? I see no problem with the explanation we have just heard. On the table next to the victim, Mr. Kudo could have seen the victim in the mirror.
What a naughty little coquet I am, confusing all the men like this.
Don't worry about it. We can keep up, except for the guy breaking out in a cold sweat over there again. I hate that guy. You said you didn't touch anything else apart from the mirror. Are you quite sure about that?
Volunteers, of course.
Very well. Mr. Wright, your cross-examination, if you please.
The mirror, it was in the middle of the restaurant, dividing the two halves.
So, run this by me again. The mirror was here, correct?
Oui.
We? Really? Because I know if I were you, I wouldn't have put a mirror there. It would be in the way. Look who's talking, trite. Huh? You're obstructing my view, among other things. But, this is my seat in the courtroom. Trabien's charm is that it gives you the impression that you're the only customer. Temporarily placing a mirror in that spot would hardly be in the way. Unlike you, trite.
I tell you, monsieur, the mirror was there, in the middle of the restaurant. There is only one seat from which you could have seen an image of the victim.
And where would that be?
Oh la la! Look how you lean towards me. I always attract the younger boys. Maybe I should keep you in suspense a little longer.
Mr. Armstrong, tell the court what you know at once.
I attract the older ones too. You know, handsome. I shall tease you too.
I'm already seeing a very hot someone, so I'm afraid you'll be waiting for a long time.
I bet she has the mocha cream skin and cappuccino perfume. Bien, I will tell you, there was only one seat from which you could have seen. That was that was the seat on the table next to the victim. That was where the old man was sitting.
So why can you only see the victim from that particular seat?
Mars, monsieur, it is obvious, non? If you look at the plans, you will understand. The victim would have been reflected in the mirror like this. Oh, my... If you were sitting at the table next to him, you would see everything, non? So that's the seat old CD was sitting in on that day? When the poisoning happened?
The old man was sitting at the table next to the victim. Why does that seem kind of odd?
After the terrible incident occurred, I moved the mirror so it was not in the way.
Did you move the mirror while Mr. Kudo was off calling the police?
Oui, exactement. I carried it out of the restaurant then.
You moved a huge mirror like that all by yourself?
What can I say? I know how to pick things up, handsome.
Godot's actually laughing at something. Well, given the witness's physique, I suppose it is possible. Did you move anything else from the crime scene, Mr. Armstrong?
Look like the obliging type, non? But naturally, I did not touch anything else.
Are you sure about that?
I touched nothing except the mirror.
Mr. Wright, is there something the witness has said that doesn't match the crime scene? Yeah, there is. Just couldn't put my finger on what exactly. Suffering from a case of heartburn, trite?
Oh, I have just the thing for that. An oil with golden myrrh and frankincense.
Add a few drops to your coffee and voila. Enjoy. Focus, Phoenix. Breathe. Need to ignore these two and just find some evidence.
It is pretty strange, though, isn't it? I mean, nobody mentioned anything about a really large mirror. You'd think someone would have, but Maggie didn't, and neither did old Seedy.
Then the only logical explanation is that there was no mirror inside Tribulations that day. Now I've just got to prove it. Somehow. Damn, really? Well, you took it. It's in your kitchen. Fuck you. Okay. So he broke the vase. But the vase is fine here. Does it want me to show this or this? Maybe both. Hang on. Okay. Your Honor, Mr. Kudo's words yesterday strongly contradict Mr. Armstrong's testimony. This is a letter of apology that was written by Mr. Kudo, is it not? I realize it looks useless, Your Honor, but this is still testimony. Huh. I guess useless people are only really good at identifying useless things. What relevance does this scrap of paper have to the trial, Mr. Wright? Mr. Kudo's testimony is actually very relevant to the question at hand, Your Honor, because it very clearly contradicts with this piece of evidence. This piece of evidence contradicts with the testimony we have heard, Your Honor. The crime photo? Yes. This photo clearly shows something that theoretically should not exist. What on earth do you mean by that, Mr. Wright? Should not exist. Huh. Sounds like you're describing yourself, trite. Now then, if the defense would please clarify its statement. What is this? What is the something that should not exist in this photo? There is one thing that was clearly demonstrated by yesterday's testimony. Mr. Kudo broke the vase that was on the table where he was sitting. And yet, as the court can see, there's an unbroken vase on the table next to the victim. Why? Because Mr. Kudo was not, in fact, sitting at the table next to the victim at all. Don't be an idiot, trite. That's impossible. That seat's the only one Kudo could have seen the victim's reflection from. Exactly. There's only one conclusion we can draw from this contradiction. There was no mirror in Tribulations that day. Your testimony, Mr. Armstrong, is an elaborate lie.
Mon Dieu!
Don't try to confuse the court, trite. Obviously, the witness cleaned up the vase, while the police were taking their time getting to the crime scene. Unfortunately, Mr. Godot, that doesn't quite work for me. Mr. Armstrong already testified to the contrary, in his own words. I did not touch anything else except the mirror. Well, witness, what do you have to say for yourself? I was right. There was no mirror in the restaurant that day. In light of this revelation, we return back to the original problem. Why did the victim have an earpiece in an ear in which he couldn't hear? You only get one shot in life. There's no turning back. If you want to claim that the mirror wasn't there, trite, then this problem is all yours. How do you explain what the old man saw? If I can answer this, then I'll be that much closer to the truth. I can feel it.
Are you gonna be okay? Can you really solve this contradiction, Nick?
There's more than just this one contradiction, Maya.
What do you mean?
Remember what Maggie told us. There was another man at the victim's table. And there was a sample CD on the victim's table. It all flies in the face of Mr. Kudo's testimony. And I think I know the reason why nothing in this case is adding up. Well, Mr. Wright, let's hear your answer. Yes, Your Honor. The reason behind all the contradiction in Mr. Kudo's testimony is simple. This case is riddled with contradictions. Yet there is one very simple answer that clears them all up. And what is that? The incident Mr. Kudo witnessed and the incident the victim experienced were two completely different events. What? Yes, the victim that Mr. Kudo saw wasn't Mr. Glenn Elg at all. It was an imposter, a phony pretending to be Mr. Elg. Obviously, unlike the victim, there was nothing wrong with the imposter's left eardrum. That's how he ended up wearing the earpiece in his left ear by mistake. Order in the court! Settle down or I'll clear the courtroom! Quiet, Gramps. Why don't you clear out of here instead? What did you say? Right. Are you saying that what Mr. Kudo saw was a setup? Yes. Someone pretended to be Glenn Elg and acted out the whole coffee poisoning. And all for the express purpose of creating a witness out of one Mr. Victor Kudo. Get real, trite. Why would anyone want to do that? Isn't it obvious? The thing Mr. Kudo was most insistent about in his testimony was...
The serving girl brought him a Javachino, but she put something in it. That's the serving girl right there in the defendant's chair. I remember her well.
It's so hard to believe, but... There was one and only one reason to show Mr. Kudo this fake poisoning. To show Maggie Bird in the act of poisoning the coffee. Are you insinuating that the waitress in the old man's story was a fake as well? It's true that there was no other customers in the restaurant at the time, but... It's only true that the chef was there. He would have noticed what was happening. That's right. Well, witness. If your restaurant really was the scene of such theatrics, you would have known about it, correct?
Ooh la la! This is most difficult for me.
No, it's quite simple. All you have to do is testify. You are under oath, after all. Was there, in fact, a phony at Tribulations that day? The defense demands that Mr. Armstrong tell the whole truth about what happened. The defense's request for additional testimony is accepted. You will accurately explain in detail the events in the restaurant that day.
Oh, wee!
In the restaurant.
The victim, Monsieur Elk, he came to my restaurant alone. I remember the old man arriving not long after him. There was no other customers. When he got word he won the lottery mon, Elk became very excited. It was approximately 5 minutes later that the poisoning incident occurred. None said there was no time for a phony to do the acting.
Just so we're clear, there was no mirror in the restaurant after all.
It was demanded pardon. Forgive me, Your Honor. I lied because I wanted this mess to be cleared up quickly.
What you have just done is commit perjury, Mr. Armstrong. I will decide how to punish you later.
We...
For now, we will hear your cross-examination. Mr. Wright, if you please. He took that perjury charge a bit too well. But I'm guessing he'll be in more serious trouble after this cross-examination. Hang on.
The victim, Monsieur Elk, he came to my restaurant alone.
Was he alone at his table as well?
My wee! I saw him from the kitchen.
Yet the defendant, Miss Bird, remembers it differently. She swears that there was another man at the victim's table. Huh! Unfortunately for you, trite. Yesterday's witness also testified that the victim was alone. You know, seeing you squirm like that reminds me of a certain coffee's bittersweet bite. What kind of coffee has he been drinking?
Not coffee, it's love. It's love that's bittersweet.
Hearing Maya say that makes her seem wise all of a sudden.
I remember the old man arriving not long after him.
By old man, you mean Victor Kudo, correct?
He comes often for my special coffee.
I drank your coffee once, Mr. Armstrong. It's special. I'll give you that. It's worth a sip just for the experience.
Oh, Oh, you make me so happy, monsieur. You are most welcome any time.
I said it was worth one sip, and nothing more. So Mr. Kudo arrived at the restaurant around the same time as the victim. Maybe I should ask about his arrival in more detail. Hang on. Choose how many minutes after. So you're saying that not much time elapsed between when the victim and Mr. Kudo arrived.
Oui, that is correct.
That still leaves the possibility that something happened in that gap of time. And by your recollection, how much time would you say elapsed?
Let me see. Approximately 2 minutes, I would say.
2 minutes? That's all? Seems unlikely that anything untoward could have happened in such a short time. Rats. I knew I shouldn't have pursued this line of questioning.
There was no other customers.
So your only customers were Mr. Kudo and the victim? How many times do you need to ask the same thing, Trite? You'd never catch me drinking the same blend twice. Huh? You're trying to establish the presence of a phony victim in the restaurant. But you're wasting your time. You can't grind birdseed to make coffee, if you catch my drift. But there's a hole in this testimony somewhere. I'm sure of it.
When he got the word he won the lottery, mon, Elk became very excited.
Did you see him?
None, I was in the kitchen, but I heard him. I remember him shouting, yes, $500,000.
Presumably the defendant heard that too, then, correct?
Maggie? She looked like a poor little frightened dove.
What about Mr. Kudo?
The old man choked on some bird seeds that got stuck in his throat.
Seems we now have yet another incident on our hands.
It was approximately 5 minutes later that the poisoning incident occurred.
And what were you doing at that point? Without any customers, you must have had time to kill.
I am a multi-talented woman, monsieur.
Sorry? What do you mean?
There is the renowned chef John Armstrong and the tragic poet Clarice Armstrong.
Clarice?
Oui, I was writing a poem, an angry tale of a chef in $500,000 of debt, cooking for a man who won $500,000 on lottery. It is called Pourquoi? It means why. Perhaps I could have recited for the court.
Please don't.
None, there is no time for a phony to do all the acting.
You mean you contacted the police as soon as the incident occurred?
I asked the old man to call from the payphone.
By your own argument, Trite. The purpose of this phony victim's performance was so the old man would see it. In other words, once the incident occurred, this opportunity would completely disappear. Indeed.
Bien. It seems the shadow of doubt has been lifted. N'est-ce pas?
I guess Mr. Armstrong is connected to this case, huh? Absolutely. Someone was impersonating Mr. Elg, and I refuse to believe he was oblivious. He was there the whole time, after all.
But if you're right, wouldn't Maggie have noticed too?
She fell unconscious when the incident occurred, remember?
You mean that's when the phony stages act?
We'll know for sure once I find a hole in this testimony. Out of curiosity, about what time was it when Mr. Kudo arrived?
Oh, none. I cannot remember, monsieur.
I believe we were told by a witness yesterday. The crime was reported at 2:25 p.m. by a kind of scary old man, sir. Does that perhaps jog your memory, witness?
Hang
on.
The incident happened about 20 minutes after he arrived. So the victim must have arrived between 2 p.m. and 2:10 p.m., no?
Just after 2, huh?
Thank you for your help in jogging my memory, monsieur. You are wonderful.
Ha ha ha! Can't sit here all the time and do nothing now, can I? The time of day will be added to the witness's testimony.
Oui, monsieur judge. Everything I do it for you.
Or CBN. That's French, isn't it? Ha 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 ha! I'm glad at least one person is in a good mood.
He's even humming a song to himself. I remember the old man arriving not long after him, just after 2 p.m.
Are you absolutely sure about the time?
When I think really hard, I am sure it was just after 2. Oui. It is the time I stopped serving the lunch menu.
Quite right. I always break for lunch when the restaurants are serving their specials. I've been known to wind up a case early just to make it on time. Ha ha! I guess you should never get between a hungry judge and his lunch. Oh, would you look at that? It's almost lunchtime already. Witness, get on with your testimony, please. I'm afraid I finally got you, Mr. Armstrong.
Quoi? What do you mean?
At the time in question, the victim was listening to the radio with his earpiece. The show he was listening to was Millionaire Radio. Each week, they announced the winning number of the $500,000 lottery ticket.
Oui, that must be Le Showman. Elk was listening to.
I can't see any problems with this testimony, Mr. Wright. I wonder... You say the victim arrived at your restaurant after 2 p.m., correct?
Oui, oui, I am sure of it. I remember it perfectly now. I know it was that time because I had just finished serving the lunch menu.
Get to the point, Trite. If you have one. That show is broadcast live at 1:30 p.m. And it claims to be the most thrilling 10 minutes of your life. It's on the air at 10:30. At 1:30. Now, supposedly the victim made some noise when it was announced that he had won. And yet, I don't believe his cry of joy would have occurred after 2 p.m. Because the show had already finished more than 30 minutes earlier by that point in time. No! This victim we've been told about has done nothing but the impossible. Listening to the radio with a ruptured eardrum. Catching a show that was already over. There is only one conclusion you can draw from these facts. This victim was an imposter, acting out the poisoning 30 minutes after the real murder. Yes, there were 2 Glen Elgs in Tribulations that day. The real Glen Elg, now dead, having been poisoned by the real killer. And the phony Glen Elg, acting out the events for Mr. Kudo to witness. It certainly seems that way. I mean, if that wasn't the case, how could you explain the time discrepancy? Quite a performance, Trite. You were almost on a roll. But sadly, you lack the rock-hard foundation of rhythm to build your song. What is this? Music Theory 101? Let's recap according to your imaginative theory. Now just after 2 p.m. The phony Elg is performing a play for the benefit of Mr. Kudo. How do you explain, then, where the real Glen Elg is? I don't believe I have to spell this out for the court. However, at this time, the real Glen Elg was already dead. That's certainly the obvious conclusion. Thank you, Trite. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. What? Now, I presume you can prove this theory of yours. Can you explain where the missing corpse went to? The missing corpse? According to the old man's testimony, there was only one other customer there. If that customer was the phony Glen Elg, then where did the killer hide the body of the real victim? Prosecution has a valid point, Mr. Wright. If your theory is to stand up to examination by the court, you must provide us with proof by answering the prosecution's question. Where did the killer hide the body? Yes, Your Honor. No conjecture, Trite. Let's hear some facts for once. Show the court a piece of evidence that proves where the body was hidden. Evidence?
What's with the intense pressure in here all of a sudden?
I thought I had him with that contradiction. But he's turned it all around and backed me into a corner instead. Well, Mr. Wright, the court will now hear the defense's theory and evidence. First, where was the body of the real Mr. L concealed? It would have been too dangerous to take the body outside. Obviously, the body must have been hidden somewhere inside Tribulations. Interesting. But where could a body have been hidden inside a restaurant? Perhaps you would care to show the court on these plans, Mr. Wright. Yes, Your Honor. The exact location where the body was concealed inside Tribulations is... The body was hidden here. I see. Nice supposition. But the real question is, can you back it up? Where's the evidence that proves the body was hidden in that location? Mr. Armstrong, do you recognize this bottle?
No. I have never seen that ugly bottle before in my life. I only use the very best bottles, monsieur. The highest quality only for me.
Where was that bottle found, Mr. Wright? Interestingly enough, Your Honor, it was found in the kitchen of Tribulations.
Quoi? But I only ever use these bottles for my aromatherapy oils.
But this bottle doesn't contain aromatherapy oil, Mr. Armstrong. No, it contains a medication. What kind of medication? I'm sure everyone remembers, don't they? That Mr. L visited an ear clinic and was given medication that day. You can't be serious. The defense had the contents of the bottle analyzed, and I have the lab results here. The contents of the bottle matched the prescription that was given to Mr. Elg. Glenn Elg's murderer hid the body in the restaurant kitchen, at which time this bottle fell out of the victim's pocket. Mr. Armstrong, when the incident occurred, didn't you say you were in the kitchen?
Mon Dieu!
Yes, you know what I'm about to say. It was you who hid the victim's body. You did a fine job pretending to defend my client, Maggie Bird. However, you were setting her up to take the fall behind the poor girl's back. Order! Order! This is an extraordinary development. Witness, did you murder Mr. Glenn Elg?
Never! I could never do such a horrible thing!
Mr. Godot! The bitterness. Every time I get lied to, I always down a mug of coffee. That's one of my rules. Do you have the slightest idea how many cups you've had by now? Then I like to do the same to the person who lied to me. I like to take them down with my empty cup. Listen up, chef. How about a brand new flavor in your ear? My H-deficit friend.
Je vous demande pardon. Please, you must hear me out. It is a trap. Listen to me, por favor.
Yo hablo español, Mr. Armstrong, and por favor, Spanish. I'm only going to ask you once. Did you do it?
No, absolutely not.
Let's hear it. You've got one shot. Right, Gramps? Witness, the court will permit you the chance to make one final statement. You lie under oath again. Mr. Godot's coffee mug awaits you. As does my gavel.
Oui, it is clear.
What do they always say in the movies? I've got a bad feeling about this. Very well. Begin your final testimony, Mr. Armstrong. The confession.
It is true. I hid the body in the kitchen. A man forced me to do it. I had no choice. I had to go along with him because there was a reason why I could not refuse. But I did not kill him, I swear it. You must believe me.
You were forced? By who?
I cannot say, or I would be erased.
Let's try a different question then. When Mr. Elk died, was he really the only person at his table?
There was another man.
I knew it.
Maggie was telling the truth.
You may cross-examine the witness now, Mr. Wright. There's just one more thing I need to do. I gotta break this guy and get him to tell us the name of the real killer.
It is true. I hid the body in the kitchen.
Did you carry the body by yourself?
I carried him, and I carried Maggie too.
Maggie too?
When she saw the victim collapse, she fainted. I could not leave her there.
But why did you hide the bodies?
A man forced me to do it. I had no choice.
What man? Who was he?
None I cannot say. I feared for my life.
He's really scared.
You'll just have to put the words in his mouth, Nick.
Yeah, you're right. If he won't tell me, I'll tell him. Well, why would you go along with this man?
I had to go with him because there was a reason why I could not refuse.
And what reason would that be, Mr. Armstrong?
You know, monsieur.
Yes?
Surely you cannot expect a young maiden to talk about such an embarrassment.
A maiden? You're a bit old to get away with that. And a bit too male. Can't finish the cross-examination without establishing his reason. So I'll just have to prove it with evidence.
But I did not kill him. I swear it. You must believe me.
So, you were claiming that all you did was hide the bodies. Is that correct?
That is right.
If we are to believe you, Mr. Armstrong, you must tell the court everything. You must make clear the identity of the man who ordered you to do this.
He's already confessed this much. He might as well stop dancing around the real issue.
Yeah, but he really doesn't want to tell us who the killer is.
Then sock it to him, Nick.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I had to go along with this. There was a reason why I could not refuse. You have a $500,000 debt, don't you? $500,000? Is this true, Mr. Armstrong?
Oui, je suis désolé. I am weak. I borrowed money.
This Mr. Armstrong's Achilles' heel. And that's why you couldn't refuse anything asked for you by this man. A $500,000 loan from a black market loan shark. And you had no way of paying it back, did you? That's why you were forced to do anything this man told you.
Oui, it is as you say.
Mr. Armstrong.
The tiger. He told me it was going to use my my restaurant for a business rendezvous. On the day in question, he was beating the victim to demand that he repay his loan. I don't know why it happened like that. I just did what he told me to do. I had no choice. I carried the body in the inconscient Maggie out of the dining area and into the kitchen. After that, I just tried to forget what I had seen.
I think we can now safely say that the man who forced your hand was Mr. Furio Tigre. I do have one further question for you, Mr. Armstrong. The poison and the lottery ticket that were found in the defendant's apron pocket. Was that your doing as well?
I knew nothing about that. Making it look like it was Maggie who had done it. I was not. It is despicable.
Mr. Godot, you will summon this Furio Tigre as a witness. I doubt that can be arranged today, so we will adjourn for now. Proceedings will continue tomorrow. "30 minutes. What? The trial will go on. I'll see to it myself. I need half an hour to get that guy on the stand. Not a minute more." How the... Don't sit back and relax yet, trite. No one knows if that chef is really telling the truth or not. This trial could still go either way. Very well. Your request is granted, Mr. Godot. We will resume once Mr. Tigre is ready to take the stand. Until then, court is adjourned for a 30-minute recess.
Hell yeah. You was talking to me?
Alrighty. I'll be right back. And we're back. I needed a break, mainly because my voice was dying. I could feel it. I could feel my voice slowly fading. January 8th, 1:21 p.m., District Court Defendant Lobby Number 1.
So we're going to finally see the tiger on the stand. We've almost got this case won now, Nick.
I wish I could agree.
Huh?
When I cross-examined Mr. Armstrong just now, he said he was just doing what the tiger told him to do. But Godot picked up on it, remember? He pointed out that without proof, we don't know if what he testified is the truth.
You mean, you think Mr. Armstrong was lying?
I don't know, but if that's the line the prosecution takes, we could be in trouble. I get the feeling that we don't have the case-making evidence we're going to need. Hey, pal! Detective Gumshoe.
What are you so jumpy about, Detective? Your hair's standing on end.
Hey, that's the pot calling the kettle black, Little Miss Topknot.
It's not a top knot!
Never mind about the hair, just calm down, alright? I can't stand still when I don't have a job to do. I kind of get wound up. No kidding. You gotta have something you need me to do, pal. Anything. Well, hey, I'm gonna take a jog back down to the precinct. I can get some prints analyzed for you if you got an hour. An hour? The trial will have reconvened by then.
But, Nick, we still don't have a really decisive piece of evidence, right?
True. Without some kind of trump card to pull out of the bag, we're really stuck. You said you could get some fingerprint analysis done in an hour? You bet! In that case, would you mind checking the prints on this for me? If you're going back to the station anyway, could you find out whose prints are on this? Oh, hey, that's the small bottle I gave back to you this morning, right? Yeah, I think it's time we solve the last mystery of who the prints on it belong to. Sure thing, pal. Actually, that's been gnawing at me too. Small bottle given to Detective Gumshoe. Okay, I'll get this back to the lab right away. Just make sure you don't lose the case before I get back. This is pretty much the final showdown, I guess.
It's time to separate the phonies from the real guys.
January 8th, 1:56 p.m., District Court number 4. Court will now reconvene. Mr. Godot, did you find this Furio Tigre? I even tamed him for you. It was a 3-cup job. No problem. Tamed him? The guy's name may be Furio Tigre, but come on. He's pretty lively. Be careful. He still bites. Very well. Please show Mr. Tigre to the stand. Witness? Please state your name and occupation to the...
Don't hide under the table, Maya. Unless there's room for me down there, too.
Would you mind?
What you say to me?
Nothing. I didn't say nothing, honest.
Who could have guessed that fear would induce a bad Brooklyn accent in the judge? I got business to take care of, you hear me? So who the hell called me into this hole? Was it you, Spiky?
No, of course not. It was the judge. Your Honor. Oh dear, I seem to have dropped my pen. Where on earth is it? Don't mind me, just carry on with the proceedings as normal.
That's it. We're doomed. Maybe yous didn't hear me. I said who the hell was it that called me in here? There's no need to shout. We can all hear you. What'd you say? There's no point struggling. You're caught in a snare. The relentless snare of the law. And I'm the one that hauled you in. Too cool.
Don't let him get the better of you, Nick.
Let's start with the basics. You know about the incident in question, correct? Incident? I don't know nothing about no stinking incident, mask boy. You mean you didn't attend the previous trial of Maggie Bird? Maggie who? I've got more important things to do than watch courtroom dramas.
Of course. Well, perhaps you could give us your testimony then. Please tell us about what you did on the day of the murder.
Phoenix Wright. You's the one who set this up, didn't you? You's gonna regret the day you ruffled the tiger's fur. You hear what I'm saying? Well, maybe I should have brought a diaper with me today.
Get a grip, Nick.
The tiger's alibi. I don't know nothing about no murder. I was tied up with business in December last year. Spent all of my time in my office. I got whales lined up to borrow cash from tender lender every single day. Yous want to check my alibi? Just ask Violetta.
Ah, at last I found my pen. Very well then, Mr. Wright, your cross-examination, please. What is it, please, witness, if you could refrain from shouting out like that.
I know the kind of games that guy in the blue plays. That lowlife ain't no lawyer. He just punches away at stupid details till he wins. Lowlife? Me? Listen up, smarty. Every time you ask me something that don't relate to this case, I'm gonna bill you $50,000, and you's gonna borrow the cash from me. That's one loan contract I refuse to sign. I don't think it ain't gonna hurt when you tangle with the tiger. Huh. I love a good spectator sport.
Just a minute. That's really not...
This witness is, how can I put it, a hungry tiger roaming the urban jungle. Get on his bad side and he'll bite everyone's head off. Yours too.
Very well. I have no choice but to impose a penalty system here.
You's better be listening. I said I got business to take care of. Big business. If I don't split now, I ain't gonna catch my bus.
Court will impose the penalty for any irrelevant pressing of witness testimony. Keep that in mind as you begin your cross-examination, Mr. Wright.
Yes, Your Honor.
You can do it, Nick.
Coming out from under there already, would you, Maya? I don't know nothing about no murder. I was tied up with business in December last year. Spent all of my time in my office. I got whales lined up to borrow cash from tender lender every single day. Yous want to check my alibi? Just ask Violetta.
Just think. All you have to do is press him on something irrelevant and bam, $50,000.
Get real, Maya. How could you pay back the money then? Your allowance should cover it.
Hey, I'm no idiot, you know.
Well, I'm certainly not the one who thought the $50,000 was free money.
Anyway, I need to work this guy without pressing his testimony too hard.
But his testimony is pretty solid as is.
I admit nothing jumps out at me as a contradiction, but I've got to find an opening somewhere, or I need to make one. Are you sure about that? We're talking about 1 month ago, you know.
You see these teeth? That's how sharp my secretary is.
Sharp? Is he talking about Viola Cadaverini?
She writes everything in my scheduler. December, mainly in the office. That's what it says, so that's where I was.
That seems like a rather sketchy schedule.
Ugh.
There he goes again. What the tiger did all December isn't the issue. What's important that is what he was doing on the day of the murder, so now what? Mr. Tigray, what do yous want? If you wouldn't mind going into a bit more detail.
This is a dead-end trite, and you know it. Remember the rules.
No, it's essential that we establish the witness's alibi accurately. I agree. The victim was killed on December 3rd. Were you in the office that day too?
Maybe yous ain't listening. Of course I was. I never set foot outside. I had meetings all day with a bunch of cats waiting to do business with me. I ain't never seen that young kid before.
I do believe the witness's last statement was important. Mr. Godot, if you would please.
Mr. Tigray, the court asks you to add that last statement to your testimony.
Don't let an animal beat you. Be a man, Your Honor, and ask him yourself.
The day you's talking about, I was in the office, too. Never saw that kid before.
Huh. Mr. Tigray, you claim you didn't know Mr. Glen Elg, but it appears that Mr. Elg knew you.
What?
Mr. Elg left this little note on his calendar. Meet with the tiger. And the date? December 3rd. December 3rd? That's the day of the murder. So, Mr. Tigray, I submit that you did indeed know one Mr. Glen Elg. Because on the very day of the incident, you met with him.
Not bad. You's actually not bad.
Sorry?
I was just messing with yous to see how good you were.
Did you hear that, Nick? He said you're not bad.
That's one compliment I can do without. Plus, he's lying through his teeth. Witness, please remember that you're under oath. Lies will not be tolerated.
You's calling me a liar? Is that what you doing?
Bravo!
So you're saying that your claim to have never seen the kid before is the truth? I said I'm dead serious. You's better believe that's the truth. Huh. Then I'd say that gives me time to enjoy another cup of pure black magic. That is, while you testify for the court again, Mr. Tigray.
Oh, yes. Would you mind indulging the court, witness?
You never actually met the victim? It's gotta be a lie right there. Time I nailed this guy. The victim, Glen Elg. I ain't no liar. I never met Glen Elg. There was some lame guy with that name, though. Wanted to borrow cash from me. I set up a meeting with the guy at my office, 10 to Linda. I waited around for him, but he ain't ever showed. I ain't never even been to that Tribulations joint you see.
I see. That all seems perfectly logical. You had arrangements to meet with the victim, but he didn't show up.
I've heard it's pretty hard to keep appointments when you're dead.
Very well. You may begin your cross-examination, Mr. Wright.
Yes, Your Honor.
Didn't I tell you I got a big deal going down today? I ain't gonna make my bus now. I'm gonna have to take the express train. That bill's going straight to you, right? Ugh. Mr. Tigre, is there something you'd like to tell the court about these matches? Matches? What you's talking about? We found them in your office at Tender Lender. They're from that restaurant. If you've really never been to Tribulations before, what was a book of the restaurant's matches doing on your desk? You've been snooping around in my stuff now too, wise guy? What are you, my ball and chain? Ain't no broad controlling me. Order! Order! Well, witness, I think it's time you started telling us the truth, don't you? Sorry, I'm terribly sorry, forgive me. I ain't no pussycat. I don't go back on what I said. But, okay, I was at the joint that day. What? Listen good, alright? I might have been there, but I still never met that kid. Well, well. Looks like an order just came in for another testimony. I'm this close to proving it was him. He did meet Glen Elg that day, and he did put poison in his coffee. He must have. I was supposed to meet with the kid at the restaurant that afternoon. When I opened the door to the joint, I saw one ugly scene. The guy was laid out over the table, stiff as concrete. Figured if the place wasn't hot already, it was gonna be, so I split. Heard the cop's sirens on my way out, and I went straight back to my office. I see. You didn't actually meet with him in the end, then. Well, Mr. Wright, your cross-examination, please. Yes, Your Honor. Hold it! If I wait around here any longer, I ain't even gonna make the normal express. No more stupid questions. Huh. No problem. Anytime Trite presses you on something irrelevant, I'll see he pays a penalty. Mr. Godot, that's my job. Your job is to slam that little hammer of yours and call a guilty verdict. So do it. Yes, sir. The Special Express ain't cheap, right? Just so yous know, since yous pay it. Oh, man. Doesn't the rule of law mean anything around here? I was supposed to meet with the kid at the restaurant that afternoon. When I opened the door to the joint, I saw one ugly scene. Guy was laid out over the table, stiff as concrete. Figured if the place wasn't hot already, it was gonna be, so I split. Heard the cop's siren, so I went straight back to my office. Bum 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 bum. Can you describe the scene? An ugly scene? What do you mean? Damn it, Godot. The witness has already told us trite, which makes that question irrelevant. But I limit myself to 17 cups of coffee during a trial. That's the rule. You better limit the number of times you take a penalty, trite. Or your gut will look like the inside of a chimney. Ashen. Don't make me burn you again, Mr. Wright. Ow! I guess I shouldn't have pressed him on that. So I'm gonna make the Special Express after all. So, to recap, this ugly scene you saw was... I was laid out stiff as concrete. I was supposed to meet with the kid at the restaurant that afternoon. Can you explain why you were going to? So the meeting wasn't due to take place at the Tenderlander at all, then? The kid was making a fuss about coming to the office. It's always that way when I want to talk about repayment. Even though I got the best punching bag you ever seen, if there are any issues. Maybe it's because of the punching bag that people are scared to come. So that's why you decided to meet at Tribulations? Huh. You're going over old ground again, trite. Sorry. Just earned yourself a penalty. Suck it down, you will. Suck down the penalty. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Alright, I have the ability. You mean you saw Glen Elg's dead body? I guess I did, but I only saw him from behind. He was wearing some raggy bit of clothes he called a hat. And what time was this? I don't know. Huh? You know what winds me up more than anything else in the world? Watches. Round watches. I ain't gonna pollute my paws with some ticking henpecker. Out of interest, Mr. Tigre, what winds you up the second most? Huh? What'd you think? Square watches. This guy for real? Look, all I needed to know was that something bad was going down in that place. I figured if the place wasn't hot already, it was gonna be, so I split. So you didn't actually set foot inside the restaurant then? The tiger is a busy cat. I don't hang around for no one. I ain't got time to be caught up in no murder investigation. So, when exactly did you pick up the matches? There are matches just inside the front door. Our detective friend wound up in trouble with the chef after taking 5 books home. Poor Gumshoe. It's almost enough to make a man cry. Heard the cop sirens on my way out and I went straight back to my office. You went straight back? Did a bout of guilt suddenly hit you for what you did? What are you trying to say? You trying to tell me yous ain't never been guilty of nothing? We all have our crosses to bear. We all have to swallow the dark secrets we hide. Like this! The courtroom's not exactly the place to talk about dark secrets, is it? Seems you've done it again, Mr. Wright. Another irrelevant line of questioning. Must impose a penalty accordingly. How about a penalty for those 2 jokers and the garbage they keep coming up with? Well, Nick, what do you think? He's running out of ways to avoid the truth. I need to press him fast before he has time to think things through. Gotta come right back at him with a contradiction. Be careful what you press him on, though, or you'll get penalized, okay? I was supposed to be with the kid. But I've already... I've already... I'm not sure. Wait a minute. Yeah, he can't go in and immediately see him. I think that's the idea. There we go. You're something of a loan-collecting pro, aren't you, Mr. Tigray? No one escapes the tiger's clutches. Well, I'm something of a lie-detecting pro. And no one escapes the Phoenix's clutches. I think it's time we got something straight. What's this, Trite? A new line of irrelevant questioning? These are the floor plans of the crime scene. You say you were standing at the entrance, Mr. Tigray. From there, your field of vision would have covered an area something like this. Indeed, the witness would have had a clear view of the victim's seat.
Isn't that what I just said? Saw the back of the kid's head.
Unfortunately for you, that is not possible. If the court would think back, you'll remember that between each of the tables is a tall partition. Why, that's true. Now look at the plans again. The truth is painfully obvious. From the entrance, the field of vision of any customer walking in ends here. So, from the entrance of Tribulations, you couldn't have seen the victim's seat. But you did see the victim that day, because you met with him. Wrong! Have you forgotten the old man's testimony yesterday? The victim was alone at his table. But the defense just proved that point to be moot. The victim witnessed by Mr. Kudo was not Glen Elg, but a fake. What? In order to have Mr. Kudo falsely testify, the real killer posed as the victim he had just killed and acted out a charade. That will do. This trial has gone on long enough without the obvious question being answered. Who exactly was this real killer who impersonated the victim? You say the killer murdered Glen Elg, and then impersonated his victim in a performance for Victor Kudo. In that case, Mr. Wright, reveal the identity of this criminal to the court. Obviously, the killer is Furio Tigre. No one else could have done it. What? Well, witness. Now that's cute. You think you can pin this on the tiger? Maybe you don't understand. Tiger is king of the jungle. So I dare you to say it again. Come on, you got the guts. You can't threaten me, Mr. Tigre. It's the defense. Go ahead and tell the witness, Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright!
Sounds to me like it must be you, old man. You've got guts, I'll give you that.
Mr. Wright, do not leave me to handle this alone.
Perhaps I can end this embarrassment.
Mr. Godot!
Let's just go back over Mr. Kudo's testimony one more time. The old man didn't see just the victim. Oh, no, no, no.
Servant girl brought him a Jalapeno, but she put something in it. There's no question about it. She very conspicuously put some white powder in there.
Was the victim he saw the real victim or not? That doesn't matter. The fact remains he saw the accused put the poison into the coffee.
Yes, it was the waitress who poisoned the coffee.
Very impressive, Mr. Godot. Waiting for my absence to launch your attack. Found your pen at last, Trite. It was in my pocket. And anyway, Mr. Kudo witnessed two people that day. He saw the victim, the supposed Mr. Glen Elg, and the waitress from behind.
Yes, your point, Mr. Wright.
I think the conclusion is obvious. If this Glen Elg was really the killer in disguise, then surely it's possible the waitress was also part of the show.
What? You mean the waitress was an imposter as well? the defendant, Miss Bird, fell unconscious immediately after the incident. And someone used her fainting to hatch an elaborate plan to pin the murder on her. Who on earth was it? Who was this waitress that Mr. Kudo witnessed? Who is this woman? Her name is Viola Cadaverini. She's an employee of Tender Lender. You's making a big mistake. Do you know who Violetta's grandfather is? You better be going home in an armored truck tonight, if you know what I mean.
Stop shaking, Nick.
Where was I? Yes, the defendant, Miss Bird, has stated the following.
Well, when I took the coffee over to the victim's table, it's true there was another customer in the restaurant. She was sort of creepy. And she had a kind of a cackling laugh.
There are just too many contradictions in this case. The second man at the victim's table who nobody but Mrs. Bird seems to have seen. The earpiece worn by the victim in his left ear when that eardrum was ruptured. And the radio show he was supposedly listening to half an hour after it was over. There is only one logical explanation that clears up all of these contradictions. The whole incident took place twice. Once for real, and once for show. And Mr. Furio Tigre, the only person who could have committed the crime, is you. Witness, what have you got to say? That's cute. Sorry? You's alright. I could do with a guy like you around. What do you mean? Okay, I'm in on this game. I'm gonna have to charter a jet to get me to my meeting now, but I'm gonna give yous one more thing to think about before I go. Something to think about? Yous got it all wrapped up nice, alright? But yous messed up one real important thing. But that can't be. I was in the joint that day, and I met that kid, too. But I couldn't have poisoned him, yes hear? What? Do you really expect us to believe you now, Mr. Tigre? Huh. What a troublemaker. Troublemaker? Looks like we're going to need another one for the road. One more steaming cup of hot testimony. Indeed. Witness, you will explain yourself to the court. I will give you one more chance to testify. What happened that day at Tribulations between yourself and the victim? Ties to the victim. Yeah, I loaned El cash, about $100,000. That day we was due to have a little chat. Kid had hit his paycheck date, see? Payback date, see? So anyway, he tells me he's got no way to pay up. I'm about to flatten the guy, then he starts screaming. Yes, I won $500,000. He got lucky, you know. Real lucky. If that waitress hadn't done what she done, everything would have been over. Now, I see that the principal amount you loaned Mr. L was $50,000. Yeah, well, you's got the vig to take into account. Interest builds up fast, you know. That's faster than fast. $100,000 is twice its principal. And the repayment deadline was December 3rd, the day of the incident in question. Yeah, he was one lucky kid. He got that $500,000 just in time. So I ain't got no reason to kill the kid. And if I ain't got no motive, you ain't got no case. His motive? He has to have one, but what is it? Ties to the victim. Yeah, I loaned El cash, about $100,000. That day we was due to have a little chat. Kid had hit his payback date, see? So anyway, he tells me he's got no way to pay up. How much did he have left on his debt? You wanted it in round figures? About $100,000. That's the whole amount. We're talking about a guy who had 58 cents in his wallet. What? You telling me he wasn't even gonna pay for the coffee? He certainly seems to have been a brave man, this Mr. Elg. That guy was smooth, I'll tell you, real smooth. You'll have your money in less than 5 minutes. That's what he says to me. God then calls me the Tender Tiger. He was skating on thin ice with me. I'm about to flatten the guy and he starts screaming. Yeah, got real lucky. Was that because the guy won the lottery? Was his last chance at a big win? You can confirm that this is the ticket in question. That's it. The Millionaire Radio Show starts at 1:30 p.m. and runs for 10 minutes. That fixes the time you two met with some accuracy. And the whole scene was acted out again 30 minutes later. Also, that Mr. Kudo would see it. I can still see the kid's face now. I ain't never gonna forget it. Was there anyone else in the restaurant at the time? I don't remember. There was no one there. I'll wear that ridiculous tiger shirt for a month. Mr. Armstrong, Maggie, and if I'm right, Viola Cadaverini were all there at that time. So, the victim had intended to repay you from his lottery winnings from the beginning. Seems that way to me. But you wouldn't normally expect to win the lottery, would you? Huh. The undying belief that your next roll will end the worst losing streak you ever had. That's what defines a true gambler. He makes it sound so cool. Don't be tempted, Nick. You haven't got the willpower for it. All I know is the kid took a shot, and he got lucky in the end. If that waitress hadn't done what she'd done, everything would have been over. The waitress? You mean the girl with the glasses in the defendant's chair? Who else could I mean? If she hadn't gotten in the way, things would have been bada bing, bada boom, over and done with. Maybe I should push a little on this. What do you mean things would have been over and done with? Are yous all there or what? I'm talking about the cash. I was there to get my $100,000 back, that's all. I'm a businessman. It was all coming together before that waitress got in the way. As far as I can tell from the witness's testimony, other than recouping his loan, Mr. Tigre had no motive for killing the victim. Witness, you will amend your testimony to reflect what you just said. Tiger's motive, huh? I was after the $100,000. I didn't got no other reason to kill this guy. I know that's not right. Are you saying you had no other motive that day? Yeah, so what? Then why don't you take the lottery ticket? Why didn't you take the lottery ticket when you left? Why'd you think? Because of Four Eyes over there. Because of Maggie? How about you go ask Four Eyes about that $500,000 ticket? He wanted it so bad. He poisoned Elg's coffee. A likely theory. Your word hasn't held water lately, Mr. Tigre. Let's not forget this witness was actually at the scene, Wright. The law doesn't exactly agree with some of the deals I sent down. I couldn't be there when the cops showed up, so I split. I see. Your Honor. The witness's last few statements are worth a good 2 cups of coffee. Well, Mr. Wright, are you happy with the testimony, or would you like it amended? I'm not going to get anywhere with the testimony as it stands. Your Honor, the defense would like the testimony amended. Very well. Witness, you will amend your testimony and reflect your recent statements, please. Thanks to what she did, my business with the kid was over. Tiger's trying to pin the crime on Maggie. If I ask him about what he saw, it's only going to damage our case. What do you mean things would have been over and done with? Talking about the cash. Okay. I was after the $100,000. Didn't got no world of reason to kill the guy. Incorrect. So you just intended to get back the $100,000 Mr. Elg owed you, correct? I loaned the guy the cash, so that's my right. Unfortunately for Mr. Elg, I don't believe the $100,000 is what you were really after. What are you getting at, trite? What else would a moneylender be after other than money? Oh, the moneylender was after money, but money in a totally different league. The kind of money that a single disc like this would fetch. What is that? A computer virus, Your Honor. A virus called MC Bomber. A computer virus? What does one of those do? A computer virus is a program that wreaks havoc on the insides of a computer. A computer? What does one of those do? I guess the beard isn't the only part of his honor that is from the Stone Age. I'll explain it to you later, Your Honor. Right now, this is an important point. A virus like MC Bomber would be worth several $1 million on the black market. Several $1 million? Lending money with no hope of ever seeing repayment would normally be bad for business. But in this case, the very fact that Glen Elg had no way to repay the money is crucial. What? Glen Elg was a programmer, a highly skilled programmer. That skill was the collateral Mr. Elg put up in order to borrow the money. You're trying to suggest the witness's motive was to get hold of that program. Exactly. The witness may have poor fashion. My computer crashed. It just... I don't know what happened. It's like... the text stopped before, the word idiot. It hanged there for like 10 seconds. And then my computer just hard crashed. It's very weird. Video seemingly is not, at least the other half of the video, is not corrupted though. So that's at very least good. Anyway, the witness may have poor fashion sense, but he is by no means an idiot, trite. A man like him could get his hands on $1 million without resorting to murder. Of course he could, provided that he had time. But what if he had needed the money right then? When the pressure's on, the luxury of choice tends to disappear. Seems you have a logical conclusion for this theory, Mr. Wright. Would you care to share it with us? Why did Mr. Tigre need money to the tune of $1 million? In December of last year, you found yourself in need of a huge amount of money. About 6 months ago, you were involved in a traffic accident, weren't you? An accident involving a car and a scooter, in which a young woman was injured. She was taken to the hospital where she underwent surgery. How much of this do you know? These medical papers document the treatment of the young woman in question. According to these, her operation cost $1 million. And yet, when the payment was due last month, you somehow managed to pay it in full. $1 million? Preposterous sum. Someone should sue these HMOs. Huh. No one would pay a bill like that. If the medical association got wind of it, the hospital would end up as dead as a morgue. But Mr. Tigre had no choice but to pay, because his very life depended on it. Order! 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 You may say his life depended on it, Mr. Wright. Indeed it did, simply because the injured woman was none other than Viola Cadaverini. Did you say Cadaverini? Bruto Cadaverini, mob boss in charge of all underworld activities in the city, and doting grandfather to his precious Violetta, also known as Viola Cadaverini. Your life was in danger unless you paid compensation to the boss, correct? It makes sense. You were desperate to acquire the $1 million Bruto Cadaverini demanded of you. So desperate, in fact, that you decided to sacrifice Glen Elg's life to pay your debt. On the day of the murder, Mr. Tigre's sole intention was to get his hands on this CD. Glen Elg had no way of paying back the $100,000, and Mr. Tigre knew it. But then a miracle happened. The kind that Mr. Tigre would prefer to say never happened. But he can't, and neither can I. The lottery win. Exactly. At the 11th hour, Mr. Elg won $500,000 on the lottery, which left Mr. Tigre with no way of getting his hands on the all-important CD. At least, no legitimate way. So he resorted to illegitimate means. That's crazy. He murdered Glen Elg, and then made his next move. Frame Maggie Bird for the crime. Mr. Tigre posed as Glen Elg, while Viola Cadaverini played the role as Miss Bird. And then they reenacted the whole thing in order to establish a witness. The witness being the one we all heard testify yesterday, Mr. Victor Kudo. Like I said, Trite, that's crazy. No one could pull off a stunt like that. For starters, there's no way the chef could have been kept in the dark about it. But Mr. Armstrong was in on it from the very beginning. Have you forgotten already, Mr. Godot? Mr. Armstrong owed the witness money too. $500,000, in fact. He had no choice but to go along with Mr. Tigre's plan. Order! Order! Silence or I will clear the court! You've put on a good show, Spiky. If yous want to stay alive in the loan shark business, you gotta be careful. You saying I dressed up like that kid? Created a witness and framed someone? If I did something crazy like that, I'd leave a trail as bright as my shirt. I ain't dumb enough to do something sloppy like that. I agree. You do? Despite your appearance, you are very careful. That's why you took one more precaution. One more trick to make sure Miss Bird had no way out. What? Another one, Mr. Wright? Interesting. Why don't you fill us all in, Trite? What was the trick you say Mr. Tigre performed to frame the accused? What on earth is that? It's an insult to think anyone could be fooled by such childish imitation. Consider yourself insulted, Your Honor. Mr. Tigre, you didn't just pose as the victim on the day in question. A month ago in this very courtroom, you posed as me. What? That's the truth. But the witness looks nothing like you, Mr. Wright. Although, now that I think about it, it was you, wasn't it? No doubt it was you. Standing in here, this very court, a mere month ago. The Phoenix Wright who put the most disreputable, shabby defense I'd ever seen. Can you prove that, Gramps? Prove the attorney who represented the accused here a month ago was this man. Are you prepared to take the stand and testify that it was him? Nope. Hey. Forget about it, yeah? I wouldn't do something like that. Not me. You made a mistake, right? It was someone else, huh? Have you no pride, sir? This isn't a matter of pride. In case you didn't know, Trite, here in court, we deal with people's lives. Ugh. Mr. Godot was right. Your Honor, speaking for myself, I am absolutely convinced. The attorney in question was the witness standing before me now. However, I preside over this court as the judge, with the vested power to hand down a verdict. Someone in my position cannot be swayed by a memory without evidence to support it. No! If the defense has no further evidence, the court will now excuse the witness. The circumstances surrounding Mr. Tigre are dubious for sure, but not conclusive.
But we've come so far.
You say he impersonated Glen Elg. You say he impersonated you. But none of that adds up to a murder charge. You don't have a shred of evidence that the witness poisoned the victim's coffee. Sucks to be you, Wright. Don't mess with the tiger, or you're gonna get mauled. You's got that. All we managed to do here was chase him around a bit. But I was so close to getting him to admit his own guilt. Looks like I won't be needing a refill. If I just had one more piece of evidence. One more piece of evidence, and maybe I could get Maggie off the hook. This witness's cross-examination is over. You're free to go, Mr. Tigre. Hold it! Your Honor, sir! Wait! Detective? Detective Gumshoe. Sorry I took so long, pal. I staked everything on this. My badge. The works. So here it is. My heart's counting on this, too. What is it, Detective? Isn't it obvious, pal? It's the final decisive piece of evidence. What? January 8th, 2:48 p.m., District Court, Courtroom number 1. Defendant lobby number 1. Sorry it took so long, pal, but I finally got the results from the lab. The results? About the prints, pal, from this medicine bottle.
Oh, so? Do you know who the prints belong to now?
Do you think I'm some sort of hack detective? Of course I know.
So, tell us. They're the tigers, right? I knew it.
Hehehehe, you bet. Clear as crystal all over the bottle. They're Furio Tigre's paw prints, all right.
That's great. We've got him now, Nick.
What's wrong with you? You've hardly said a word since Detective Gumshoe got here.
He laid everything on the line for this, Nick.
I know. Look, I'm sorry. This is kind of hard to say, but it really doesn't make any difference whose prints are on that bottle now. Huh? Well, what? Well, why not? What we need to produce at this stage in the trial is irrefutable evidence that the tiger put poison in Glen Elk's coffee. He's already admitted that he met the victim. The fact that his prints are on this bottle, that really doesn't make any difference now. I knew it. Great. No matter how hard I try, I'm never of any use.
Hey, don't be so hard on yourself.
This was our last chance to help Maggie. And I've been working on some useless piece of evidence the whole time. It's alright. I'm a real loser. No breaking news to me, pal.
Detective Gumshoe? Maggie? You've been working on something for me?
Sorry I let you down, Maggie. I know you didn't do it. And I'm a detective. We're supposed to be able to prove stuff like that. I'm really sorry. I'll get out of your hair now.
Detective Gumshoe, wait!
He's gone.
Isn't there anything we can do now, Nick?
I wish there was. Gumshoe worked so hard to get that evidence. If only there was some way I could use it. Victim's ear medication covered in Furio Tigre's fingerprints. (3:04 p.m. District Court, Courtroom number 4. Mr. Wright! Yes, Your Honor. I granted you a recess so you could prepare this decisive evidence you've discovered. Yes. You'll keep us all in suspense, Trite. Show us. Naturally. We can assume it's evidence that will actually stand up in court, can't we? Think, Phoenix. Don't let Gumshoe's hard work go to waste. How much more of my time are yous gonna waste? I ain't been in no court before, but yous lawyers should know how to blow things out of proportion. No doubt, given the nature of the evidence, it will speak for itself. Nevertheless, you will talk us through it, Mr. Wright. Well, I know I can't prove anything new with this evidence. I'm really backed into a corner here. But maybe if he thinks he's got me beat, he'll let his guard down a bit. Don't keep us waiting any longer, Mr. Wright. Present this final decisive piece of evidence to the court. This is the defense's final piece of evidence. Isn't that the victims? Your Honor. Naturally, the court is already aware of the contents of this bottle. However, interesting new information has come to light. We have clearly identified some fingerprints on it. Fingerprints belonging to you, Mr. T. Gray. What? But, Mr. Wright, what conclusion are you hoping to draw from this new information? Everyone in here knows what this bottle contains, except one man. One person in this courtroom should theoretically be in the dark. My prints are on that pansy-looking bottle? Is that what you saying? Well, what the hell's in it anyway? A phony trial, a phony lawyer, and phony clues. Everything about this case has been phony. Seems like the perfect excuse for some phony evidence. Mr. T. Gray, this is the decisive piece of evidence that will prove your guilt. Why? Because it contains... This bottle contains potassium cyanide. Potassium cyanide? The poison used to murder Mr. Elg, Your Honor. The victim's killer used this very bottle. And on this bottle, Mr. T. Gray, we found your fingerprints. Well, how do you explain that? You'd make a good clown, you know that? What? Yous ain't never gonna get this to stick. Yous just making me laugh now. You think a cheap bluff like that's gonna fool the tiger? A bluff? I can see straight through you, Phoenix, Wright? That ain't the bottle with the cyanide in it. No. This is the bottle we found traces of the poison in. Don't mess with the tiger, or you're gonna get ripped to shreds. Cyanide bottle was brown. It was made of glass. That cheap piece of trash don't look nothing like it. Got him. At last. What? Why's everyone gone quiet? I said that bottle... Is this the bottle you're referring to? Yeah, that's it. That's the bottle the cyanide was in. But yous ain't gonna find my prints on that bottle. Don't let that cozy-looking suit fool you people. That lawyer's just playing games. Tell him, Mr. Prosecutor. Tell that guy where to go. You still haven't figured it out? Don't you realize what you just said? What I said? What did I just say? You were summoned to this court for the first time earlier today. If you really had nothing to do with the murder, you shouldn't have known all the little details. For instance, you shouldn't have known what kind of bottle the potassium cyanide was in. But just now, you slipped up in front of every single person in this courtroom. You described the exact bottle used by the killer to hold the poison. Yous don't know who you's messing with. I'm the Tiger. I control millions of dollars on the black market. Yous think I'm gonna let some jumped-up suit get the better of me? Sure, the last piece of evidence was phony. But that's just what you deserve. The phony trial with a phony lawyer. It was all played out by you, the biggest phony of all. What's going on? Looks like a blackout. Well done, Trite. I saved my 17th cup of coffee just for you. Savor it. While you watch the police restrain your prey. Mr. Wright, you caught a tiger by his toe. But if this one hollers, he won't be let go. Now then, how are things going with Mr. Tigre, Mr. Godot? He is being arrested on suspicion of the murder of Glen Eld, Your Honor. Fortunately for us, we managed to rectify a very grave error. Miss Bird was found guilty in the absence of a genuine defense attorney. Yes, she was. And in the absence of genuine evidence. But the tiger made one mistake. Indeed. He very nearly got away with everything if it wasn't for that one slip of the tongue. Furio Tigre is a truly frightening criminal. The truly frightening one is that defense attorney over there. Godot. Well, I'm in a position to deliver my verdict. This court finds the defendant, Maggie Bird. That is all. This court is adjourned. 4:10 p.m.
Mr. Wright, I'm at a loss for words. Thank you, sir. Congratulations, Maggie. I was so mad when Mr. Wright landed me in all that trouble a month ago. But now I feel like I can forgive him.
Hey, that wasn't me, Maggie. That was the tiger.
Look, Nick. In the doorway.
Detective Gumshoe. Oh, guess I'll be heading off then. See you around, pal. Wait!
Detective Gumshoe.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations, Maggie.
Thanks.
I knew you were innocent all along.
Why didn't you say that in your testimony, then?
Huh? Oh, well, I was... Well, guess I'll be heading off then. See you around. Wait up, detective. He just ran off.
Maggie, why are you being so hard on him? He busted his butt for you. It's thanks to him that we got the medication bottle. That wasn't even of any use. But it's only because Mr. Wright used it so cleverly. Detective Gumshoe was just running around in circles.
Poor guy. Looks like she still isn't ready to forgive him.
Can't you put in a good word for him, Nick?
Yeah, Maya's right. I should help Gumshoe out. It's clear he needs it. Maggie, you know, Detective Gumshoe's been really worried about you through all this.
I wanted to believe that, sir. But on that first day of the trial, he practically gave the judge a free pass to lock me up.
He didn't have any choice, Maggie. He's a detective. He has to report the facts.
He doubted me, that's why. He thought I might have done it.
I've got to prove to her that Gumshoe really cares about her. I know. I'll give her a little present to celebrate her freedom. Here you are. A present to celebrate your freedom.
That's...
A present from Detective Gumshoe, made with a ton of love.
He said you lost weight and he was worried about you. Detective Gumshoe? I actually really like weenies, you know? You guys hear that? I'm pretty hungry myself, you know.
Yeah, the trial dragged on a bit today, didn't it?
Is it okay if I eat this now? So, how is it, Maggie? It's really good. I haven't eaten anything. They've been starving me.
So the case of phony versus genuine comes to an end. The false allegations surrounding Maggie have all been cleared up. And who knows? Maybe a whole new chapter of her life is about to start. Recipe for Turnabout. Turnabout beginnings. Save your progress. Yes, please. Boom! There we go. So, I gotta find some sort of software to connect part 1 and part 2. I think I have one in mind. I don't have any professional software, but I'm 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 sure there's probably like some sort of free software that I can find that'll just let me connect videos together. 'Cause it's not really editing truly, but yeah. So yeah, that's it. Recipe for Turnabout. I really like Furio Tigre as sort of the villain of the case. He's such a character. I love him a lot. Um, I wish Viola got a little more screen time. Uh, she doesn't feel that developed as sort of a secondary villain slash kind of casualty in Furio Tigre's sort of reign. Uh, but yeah, I wish Viola was stretched out a bit more. Uh, Everything going on with Armstrong is just kind of weird, especially nowadays in current year. It just feels kind of weird. Definitely dates the game a bit. Uh, but I still think the case overall is good. Victor Kudo is okay. Uh, Glenn Elg's boss, I already forgot her name, from Blue Screens Incorporated. She doesn't really get a lot of screen time. This case is weird where a lot of the side characters don't get a lot of screen time except for like half of them. Half of the side characters just don't get touched. It's like in the previous one, in the Stolen Turnabout, you had Adrian Andrews, you had the villain of that case, with Luke Atme. You had Desiree, you had Master Mask and Ronnie, you had Larry, and then of course the trial people, the judge and Godot, but that's obvious. But like all 5 of those characters played fairly major roles in the investigation. Meanwhile, Victor Kudo kind of was around in the investigation, but it felt like you couldn't really get much out of him aside from his maid fetish. And then his court battle is just us walking in circles for just hours. John Armstrong with the offensive French accent that I gave him. Uh he's fine. I think he's definitely the most well-rounded character in regards to he is there throughout the case. Like going back to episode 2, the 4 side characters of Ron Delight, Desiree Delight, Luke Atme, and Adrian Andrews, they're all in the first investigation fairly prominently, and then Larry shows up in the first investigation but doesn't become prominent until the second investigation. Meanwhile, John Armstrong is like the only person that is prominent in both investigations. And then Victor Kudo is only really prominent in the first investigation. And then Tigre appears in the first one, but only really becomes a thing in the second part. And then Viola also has a similar thing, and she only appears in the second part, and even less so than Furio Tigre. At least Furio Tigre has his trial portion. Viola doesn't even have that. And then there's Glenn Elg's boss, who literally is there to spout exposition about Glenn, and to have a psyche lock, and that's about it. Yeah, the side characters, See, the more I talk about it, the more I'm getting down to the root of it. My problem is the side characters. The side characters don't get a lot of screen time. And the one side character they do give a ton of screen time throughout the episode as a whole is a character that, honestly, out of all of them, I don't want to be around the most. So it's just weird. It's just a very weird case. I don't hate it. I still think it's a good case. I think all the characters are good for what they are. But like I said, John Armstrong is the only one that is consistent. And of the 5 sort of side characters, except Victor Kudo. Well, actually, no. You know, it's mainly the 2 kind of villains, Furio Tigre and Viola. I wish had more screen time. More specifically, Viola, to be specific. But, like, Blue Screen's Boss Lady and Victor Kudo don't really have much in regards to Jean Armstrong in terms of character and what you could really do with them. But they don't really talk about that sort of black market tenderlender side that much. Very underdeveloped, I feel like. But anyway, yeah, I've sort of gotten to the root of the problem for Recipe for Turnabout for me. I still think it's a good case. This is the worst case of this game. And it's still better than like half of the cases we've played in the previous 2 games. Like, I'd say this is better than episode 1 and 3 from the second game. I'd say this is better than episode 1, 2, and 3 from the first game. Well, maybe not 3. I'd have to think about it a little more. So yeah, it's still a good case. It's still a good case, but I definitely think it is the weakest case of this game. Which is fine. But anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. I got to figure out how to connect these 2 parts together. And then next time, we will come back for Turnabout Beginnings. Thank you all for watching, especially if you got this far, and stick around, because there's a lot more to come.